Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, he dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is good. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining.
Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. Ja Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parish. The Grizzlies lose on Tuesday night to the Los Angeles Lakers. They drop their third straight road game. They have now fallen into a tie with the Sacramento Kings. The Kings have a tiebreaker over the Grizzlies, I believe, as things stand right now. I believe based on conference record. So that makes the Grizzlies third in the Western Conference. If the season ended today, they would face the Warriors in the first round. Of course, if the season ended today, there'd be no Ja Morant, and the Grizzlies would be big underdogs in that playoff series. The Grizzlies' last two losses, of course, have been without Ja Morant. No Ja Morant, no Steven Adams, no Brandon Clark for this game. The Grizzlies are very, very shorthanded, and the game followed a familiar pattern that we are unfortunately familiar with. The Grizzlies were ahead in the fourth quarter. They were up by 6 with 8 minutes to go. But the Lakers used a 17-4 run to swing the game. And this is on the heels of the Clippers going on a 24-2 run to swing the game on Sunday. And the Nuggets going on a 16-0 fourth quarter run to blow it open last Friday. The Grizzlies have lost 11 of 12 on the road. The only win in that stretch being at Houston, the NBA's worst team. The Grizzlies, frankly, they're spiraling a little bit. And questions are going to continue to swirl around Ja Morant and what's going on with him. And we still don't have a lot of answers. I'll discuss some updates and some clarifications about Ja Morant's situation at the end of the show, but I'll start off this episode mainly talking about the loss to the Lakers. Now, as we know, the Grizzlies are shorthanded, and like I said last episode, with no Brandon Clark, that's just one fewer avenues you have to victory. If your normal pathways for success don't work, you have one less available option to pull out a win. Taylor Jenkins, after the game, said, our margin of error is very, very low. It's another way of saying it. Desmond Bane was really off in this game. Dylan Brooks was hideous in this game. Tyus Jones was kind of struggling until basically the fourth quarter. If Desmond Bane is having an off night, if Dylan Brooks is having an off night, and if Ja Morant's not playing, it's really hard to win. That's basically it. The Grizzlies' second unit is decimated, and you're missing two starters. You're now having to play Xavier Tillman as the only big lineups when Jaren Jackson Jr. goes out of the game. Coming into this matchup, the Lakers are also shorthanded. The Lakers they don't have LeBron James, of course. They're also missing Mo Bamba. They didn't have a backup center. They had Wenyen Gabriel. So it honestly was kind of an even matchup in that sense. When the subs came in, it was a lot of really odd lineups. But unfortunately for the Grizzlies, Rui Hachimura and Austin Reeves outplayed all of our subs, and also they're probably better overall than our subs. A lot of people are upset with Taylor Jenkins. You lose 3 straight games where it's this pattern of blowing fourth quarter leads. I guess it's a common thing as a fan to be the coach is not performing well. We got to do different stuff. For me, it's talent. For me, it's the players the Grizzlies are playing. Yeah, it's really unfortunate that the Grizzlies' half-court offense is bad, but it's been bad. It's been bad for 2 years. The Grizzlies' formula of getting the ball up on the rim and letting Steven Adams rebound it or Brandon Clark rebound it, it doesn't work anymore. Those guys didn't play. The Grizzlies recovered very few offensive rebounds. This is 2 straight games. Of course, you're 2 games without Brandon Clark since the Brandon Clark injury, And as Steven Adams continues to miss games where the Grizzlies aren't getting second chance points. Well, if you don't get second chance points and you shoot 38.7% from the field, that's a very bad formula. I mean, again, I keep falling back to it's impressive we were ahead. The Grizzlies are now 7-11 in the 18 games that Steven Adams has missed. If you missed it last episode, in those 18 games now that Steven Adams has missed, the Grizzlies are last in fourth quarter offensive rating, fourth quarter net rating, fourth quarter rebound percentage, overall rebound percentage. Nothing's going to change about that. We keep hoping something will change. Nothing's going to change. While Steven Adams and Ja Morant are out, you might get lucky, have a big offensive rebounding night. You might get lucky, make a bunch of shots, but right now the team is what it is. You're on the road, so it's a little bit harder. You're coming back home. But you got some tough matchups. You play the Warriors on Thursday night, early game. You play the Mavericks on Saturday night. The Grizzlies have been elite at home. So you might, you could easily get a split. You could win one of those games. You might win both of those games. But the long-term problems for the Grizzlies aren't going to be fixed necessarily when Steven Adams comes back. They'll be better, of course. You'll be asking less of your full roster. But you're not going to have the success you had last year when Ja Morant missed. Of course, when Ja Morant missed games last year, they were basically fully healthy otherwise, usually. You had Brandon Clark available and Steven Adams available, and, of course, the bench guys from last year who have moved on. When I say I'm not super frustrated with the coaching in the past few games and fourth quarters, I mean, some of that, I guess, is my own personal lack of knowledge about NBA offenses and what the Grizzlies should be running. My analysis of basketball games is normally about the talent on the court. And when I look at the Grizzlies roster and the available players, I don't know who else you would play. Dylan Brooks, like I said, rough game. He did make 3 3-pointers, but that's on 10 attempts. At one point, I believe he was 3 out of 5 from 3, maybe 3 out of 6. He at least missed his last 4 threes. He finished 5 for 17 from the field. The Lakers were basically okay with him shooting. The Lakers were okay with lots of Grizzlies players shooting. You saw Jared Vanderbilt not even contesting David Roddy when he had the ball on the perimeter. They're saying, go ahead, David Roddy, shoot 3-pointers. David Roddy went 1 out of 4. David Roddy had a miss in the fourth quarter where Anthony Davis just sprinted out, ran out, got a transition dunk after the miss. The Lakers are daring the Grizzlies to shoot, and teams are going to continue to do this. Desmond Bane missed all 5 of his 3-pointers. The Grizzlies only made 24% of their threes as a team. The Grizzlies actually won the 3-point battle. The Lakers only made 7 3-pointers. The Grizzlies made 9 3-pointers. But everyone's like, yeah, get Dylan Brooks out of there. Okay, you put Luke Kennard in. Luke Kennard is leading the NBA in 3-point percentage. But Luke Kennard's going to get targeted relentlessly on defense. Who else are you going to put in the game? I mean, I guess the option is Aldama at the 3. They're not doing it. I thought it was funny. The TNT play-by-play guy, Brian Anderson, at one point was like, really small lineup for the Grizzlies. And it was basically the largest lineup the Grizzlies could play. I mean, Jaren wasn't out there, but it was a Xavier Tillman, santialdama front court with Tyus Jones, Desmond Bane, and Dylan Brooks. And the guy's not totally wrong. Not a lot of length between Tyus Jones, Dylan Brooks, and Desmond Bane. And then Aldama, he's tall, not the thickest. And then Tillman's not that tall. I mean, again, Aldama played well. Aldama had a really nice game. I was happy to see him play over 26 minutes. He had a huge first quarter, got 8 points there. In a very ragged overall first quarter for the Grizzlies as a team. Both teams struggled to score. Xavier Tillman had a really good game. Got 4 steals and a block. 10 rebounds. He got 4 of the Grizzlies' 6 offensive rebounds for the game. Tillman and Aldama played well. Jaren had an awesome game. I mean, he had his hands full with Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis posts a 30-20 game. Anthony Davis destroys the Grizzlies on the backboards like we thought he might. But frankly, the Grizzlies did an okay job defensive rebounding this game. Second chance points didn't kill him. I thought second chance points would probably kill him this game. I was wrong. Wasn't second chance points. It was the Grizzlies' lack of offense. But Jaren finishes with 26 points, 2 blocks, a steal, 8 rebounds. Had a 14-point, I believe it was a 14-point second quarter, made all 5 of his field goal attempts. On the wing, though, you go back to who are you going to play? Dillon was pretty good, was okay, let's say, the first 3 quarters. Had a really bad fourth quarter. Desmond Bane goes 3 for 14. Of course, you're not benching Desmond Bane. Dillon Brooks is going to draw more of the ire because he's the more frequent bad shooter. His season-long numbers are atrocious. But like Luke Kennard was 1 for 4 in this game. And anytime he's in there, he gets targeted on defense. Luke Kennard also had 2 terrible turnovers. 2 plays where he dribbled, could get no separation from his defender, picked up his dribble, and then launched the ball to the other team. One was like a pick 6 for the other team where Conchar got dunked on. The other one, I think he just launched it out of bounds. Like, are you going to play John Conchar? You could, but no one's... I think the people upset about benching Dillon Brooks aren't screaming for John Conchar to play. I assume we're all wanting Luke Kennard to play. But like, you have to pick between David Roddy, Zaire Williams, John Conchar, Luke Kennard, santialdama. Are any of those guys better than like Rui Hachimura? Are any of those guys better than Austin Reeves? So I don't blame the coaching as much. I think, like Taylor Jenkins said, very small margins of error. It's not bad shooting luck. As I say, it's bad shooters shooting. All right, Desmond Bane, bad shooting luck. But the Grizzlies are outmatched right now without Ja Morant, without Steven Adams. Like right now, the Grizzlies' offensive answers, there aren't any. So maybe it is on Taylor Jenkins to like, why can't we generate a few more better looks? I thought the looks were fine though. It's just we're not making shots. We can't make shots. The Grizzlies right now that Brandon Clark's out, have 2 players on their roster who, according to Cleaning the Glass, are above average on expected points per shot attempt, or on points per shot attempt. Right now, the only 2 players on the Grizzlies roster who score above average points per shot attempt, it's Desmond Bane and Luke Kennard. And Luke Kennard just joined the team. Also, Luke Kennard made his first 2-pointer as a Grizzly. Good job, Luke. He'd only made 3-pointers since he joined the team. So the Grizzlies have 2 players who are above average for their position. That's an important clarification. Above average for their position on points per shot attempt. That's why Steven Adams isn't in there, despite Steven Adams having a pretty good field goal percentage. When Steven Adams and Brandon Clark are out, they lack the rebounders. Last year, players who were above average offensive rebounders for their position, based on offensive rebounding percentage, it was Steven Adams, John Conchar, Ja Morant, D'Anthony Melton, Brandon Clark, Dillon Brooks, Kyle Anderson, and Xavier Tillman. It's a lot of guys. All right, this game, no Adams, no Morant, no Melton, of course, no Clark, no Kyle Anderson, of course. This season, your above average offensive rebounders per position, it's Adams, Morant, Conchar, and Tillman. So this game you had Conchar and Tillman available. For defensive rebounders for their position last season, above average ones were Melton, Conchar, Kyle Anderson, Ja Morant, Steven Adams, Desmond Bane, Tyus Jones. It's the same exercise. This season, the only ones above average are Conchar, Morant, Adams, Bane. You're missing 2 of those. So all that to say, in this game, you had 2 players available who were above average for their position on points per shot, 2 players who were above average for their position on offensive rebound percentage, and 2 players who were above average for their position on defensive rebounds. The Grizzlies are very shorthanded. Some of it, I think, is self-inflicted beyond the injuries. Not to beat the dead horse, but you're not getting much, at least, from Roddy and LaRavia and Kennedy Chandler, which is 3 of your 15 roster spots on rookies. Zaire Williams, dead man walking on the basketball court. Like, they're trying him. I support trying Zaire Williams. You need help from somewhere. You have to give some of these guys more minutes. I mean, like, if this was an elimination game or something, like say the Grizzlies were in a game 7 today, or in a play-in game today, maybe you do totally shorten your rotation. Maybe you just play, I would say you'd play Tyus Jones, Desmond Bane, Dillon Brooks, Jaren Jackson Jr., Xavier Tillman, and you'll probably play Kennard and Aldama and Conchar off the bench. That might be what I would do. You out there might be like, no, I'm playing Roddy over Conchar. Fair. For me, I'm saying let's play 8 deep. Those are our guys. Let's just go with it. And we're probably going to be outmatched. But we don't have to play an elimination game today. The season's not over. Still got 20 games left. And I think you got to find some more help on your roster, which is why I'm okay with continuing to play Zaire Williams. Like, Zaire Williams comes in, first thing he does is airball a corner three-pointer. And it's just like, it's ghastly. You're like, what in the world's happening? He gets the ball stolen from him, where basically Jared Vanderbilt makes a no-look deflection, knowing that Zaire's going to make the predictable play. Zaire did make a nice little 12-footer. Great to see, but, he didn't play in the second half because they can't trust him. Roddy, he was being dared to shoot, like I said. Couldn't trust him. I mean, the Grizzlies don't have their identity at all. This roster is built around Ja Morant getting in the paint and scoring. The Lakers won the points in the paint in this game. This roster is built around pushing the pace, getting in the paint, getting offensive rebounds. You're missing your offensive rebounders. You're missing your star point guard. Makes it very, very tough. I did think, again, complimenting the coaching, like as far as the rotations in the lineups, not much I would have changed. I mean, again, a Xavier Tillman lone big lineup when you're having to play Conchar and Roddy and Zaire all at the same time, that's rough. But again, you're shorthanded. You got to play somebody. I liked some of the lineups they did where it was Bane and Kennard and Conchar, Aldama, and Tillman as far as a 3 bench player lineup. I like that a lot. But is that lineup always going to work? Of course not. And that goes back to the smaller margin of error without your main talented guys and lack of depth that can come through for you. Now, Steven Adams, I think we can cross our fingers. We'll be back on Thursday. That's a guess. It's probably too optimistic since he hasn't done the I'm doubtful for a game yet on the injury report. So maybe it'll be the Saturday game. Steven Adams returns. But the Steven Adams absence has lasted longer than we anticipated. And, of course, now the Grizzlies still in the situation of not having Ja Morant, and we have no idea how much time that will be. Let's talk a little bit about what we know now about the Ja Morant situation and things that I didn't say explicitly on the last episode that can give us a little bit more information. I'll do that right after this short break. Grow your basketball skills this spring with Grizzlies Youth Basketball Spring Break Camps for kids ages 6 to 13. Register your child for one of the 2-day sessions over spring break hosted in Memphis, Tennessee, and Little Rock, Arkansas. These spring break camps are $125 and include basketball skills training, a t-shirt, and 2 tickets to the April 4th game against the Portland Trailblazers. Space is limited, so sign up today at memphisgrizzlies.com. All right, it's been a few days since all of this controversy with Ja Morant started, and he announced that he was stepping away from the team for a little bit to address his mental health and to get better as a person, deal with his anxieties, and all of the rest of that stuff. We still don't know a lot about exactly what's going on. We still don't know some specific facts just about the circumstances of the video in the nightclub. Of course, the big thing that I didn't mention on the last episode that has been a big topic of discussion has been the NBA's rules about having firearms on team premises and a team plane. Because this was a road game, because this event happened in Colorado, there, of course, is the question, where did that gun come from? Whose gun is it? And was it, in fact, on the Grizzlies team plane? If, in fact, it was, that's a pretty clear-cut case of a suspension coming from the league. Now, I don't know how long it takes to find out, like whether or not Ja Morant is a registered gun owner, whose gun it is, how the gun got there. I don't honestly expect to get like a straightforward, yes, the gun was on the team plane. I don't know if we'll ever find that out or have that come out. But because of all this and because of like the NBA's rules about having firearms, there's been a lot of rumors and incorrect information floating out there about like suspensions and things. The 50-game suspension was floated out there. That's been there for a while. That has always been a rumor. I believe its origin is based on the Gilbert Arenas 50-game suspension back in the day. Of course, very different circumstances between Ja Morant waving a firearm on Instagram Live and Gilbert Arenas' situation. Gilbert Arenas pointed a gun at a teammate in the locker room. So that's wildly different than this situation. If you look at some of the past suspensions for players for pleading guilty to various crimes and pleading guilty to crimes involving guns even, there is no precedent for Ja Morant getting suspended like for the rest of the season or 50 games or anything like that. Now, will Ja Morant be healthy enough to play basketball again this season? That's where no one has any idea. Taylor Jenkins was asked before the game last night if there was a time frame for when Ja Morant would be out. Taylor Jenkins said, quote, "It's a healing process." He also said, "We've got to have due diligence and be respectful and wait for Ja to be in a better place." He also said to put a timetable on that is disrespectful. I guess there's no other way to answer the question. I don't think he was implying that it was disrespectful to ask that question about how long Ja Morant is expected to be out, because basically that's what every basketball fan wants to know. The media, any reporter would definitely want to ask very straightforwardly, hey, do we know how long Ja Morant's going to be out? So we don't know how long Ja Morant's going to be out, even if the league steps in and does anything. Taylor Jenkins was also asked, why hasn't the team officially suspended him or punished him publicly for the gun video? I think this is a fair question too. Like I said last episode, it's not a suspension. The team announced that Ja Morant would be away from the team. They didn't say they were sending him away. They didn't say if it was personally implemented by Ja Morant or if the team had asked him to go away. I do think there's a distinction, and it's worth asking or being curious, like, why hasn't the team punished Ja Morant for this video? And Taylor Jenkins said they're keeping all those things internal. Those are all internal discussions. Which I don't know if that's fair or not, to keep that internal. There is, I guess, some part of fandom and curiosity where you're like, well, if he broke a team rule and a league rule, should the team punish him, and should we know what that is? With a sports team and like a big public entity like the Grizzlies, we can ask those questions. And again, the league probably is going to suspend him. They're doing their own investigation. We don't have a timetable. So I think in addition to whatever time he's taking away to get healthy, to address the things in his life that have led to him deciding to go on IG Live with the firearm. And of course, the league calendar is ticking away, and there aren't that many games left. So I don't know what kind of resolution we can hope for or expect to have. If you're just asking me to guess now, like what an NBA suspension would be, I assume it would be like something like a single-digit game suspension. Like I would be very surprised if it was like 10 or 15 games, unless we find out like that was an illegal gun and he did have it on the plane and there was also a bunch of other circumstances. But if you look back in the past 2 decades of some other NBA suspensions, like Steven Jackson was suspended 10 games by the league for pleading guilty to a charge of firing a gun outside a strip club. Like that's a much different situation. Delonte West was suspended a few games for a weapons charge that he pleaded guilty to. Raymond Felton was suspended 4 games for pleading guilty. Again, another pleading guilty to a felony weapons charge where it was pled down, but he was suspended 4 games for that. So I don't know if any of these things rise to that level. It is a different commissioner at this point than it was back for these other things. I'm not sure if there's been a gun situation with Adam Silver yet, but again, I personally would find it very surprising if it was like a 10, 15, or 20 game suspension. I don't know if that's necessarily precedented for something where no one's been charged for a crime. But again, I don't know, and we don't know. And maybe this will be a new precedent set for Adam Silver and this unique situation. And of course, all of that is just what would the NBA do if, in fact, Ja Morant were healthy and ready and wanting to play. We haven't crossed that bridge yet. I don't know when we are going to cross that bridge. Anyways, a couple of other things about the Lakers game. Of course, Dillon Brooks played in the game because he was terrible, but he'd missed the previous game, for accruing too many technical fouls. Dillon leads the NBA in technical fouls. If you don't know, Dillon will now be suspended 1 game for every 2 technical fouls he picks up. So if he gets 1 next game, he's not suspended, but if he gets 1 more, he'll then be suspended for another game. If he picks up 2 in the next game and he gets ejected, he'll also be suspended for the following game. So Dillon's going to have to keep an eye on those technical fouls for the rest of the season. That count does reset in the playoffs. Of course, I know many of you are okay if Dillon Brooks gets suspended and has to miss a game. Also, I think another stat highlighting the Grizzlies' lack of ability rebounding with no Steven Adams. Maybe you don't need any more stats. The eye test, it's pretty apparent. But this year, the Grizzlies for the whole season, they're a slightly below average defensive rebounding team and a very good offensive rebounding team. Now, if you highlight those stats when Steven Adams is actually on the court, they're an average defensive rebounding team and an absolutely elite offensive rebounding team. These are similar numbers as last year. Last year, just overall, in general, the Grizzlies were an average, slightly above average defensive rebounding team and one of the best, if not the best, offensive rebounding team. The numbers last year, if you took away Steven Adams, just no Steven Adams on the court, they were still a very good offensive rebounding team, but quite poor as a defensive rebounding team. This year, with Steven Adams off the court, they are an atrocious defensive rebounding team and also not a good offensive rebounding team. Not having Brandon Clark exacerbates that because Brandon Clark is a decent offensive rebounder, but also Brandon Clark, not a good defensive rebounder. Him being off the court doesn't really affect the Grizzlies' defensive rebounding numbers either way. So it all goes to say, we're depending so much on Steven Adams for these rebounds. He's really had been the linchpin of the Grizzlies kind of having the success they need to have, and that's why we need him so much. Is it good to depend on Steven Adams this much? No, definitely it's not. But it is what it is, and it's where we are right now. So please hurry back, Steven Adams and Ja Morant. We're thinking of you. Hope things get better with you. Again, the Grizzlies play the Warriors on Thursday, then the Mavericks on Saturday. Then they play at the Mavericks on Monday, at the Heat on Wednesday, at the Spurs next Friday. That's St. Patrick's Day. And then you come home for a homestand, Warriors, Mavericks, Rockets. This is the gauntlet we talked about. The post-All-Star break gauntlet. The team is 3-4, having now lost 3 straight, and of course dealing with all kinds of issues that we did not foresee. Anyways, thanks a bunch for listening to these episodes. Please subscribe to the Grits and Grinds YouTube channel. Tell a friend about the show. Thanks to everybody who's already done those things. Hope you have a great Wednesday. Talk to you soon. Go Grizz.